What's up guys, welcome back to Pat Outdoors, and today we're going to be comparing the SLX DC XT to the SLX DC. So let's get into it. So these are the two fishing reels we're going to be talking about today. This is the SLX DC and this is the SLX DC XT. So first we're going to start with the price. This I got for $180. In most retails it's $200, but I got it off eBay for open box. And then this I got for around $216 off of Digitaka, which is a Japanese tackle website. This is only sold in Japan, so you will have to get it imported. However, right now is a great time to buy, just because the conversion rate of the yen to US dollar, because that the yen is worth less right now, you can actually get this for cheaper than it usually is. So, gear ratio. This gear ratio is 6.3 to 1, and gear ratio is how many times the spool spins per one crank. So when I spin this once, the spool spins 6.3 times. And you can also get this in 7.2 to 1 on the SLX DC HG, which is the high gearing model. And you can also get it on the 8.2 to 1 on the SLX DC XG, which is the extra high gearing. This one I have on the 6.2 to 1. You can also get it on the 7.4 to 1 on the SLX DC XT HG, which is the SLX DC XT high gear, and the 8.1 to 1 on the XG model, which is the extra high gearing model. So now we're going to weigh each of the reels in person after they've been spooled up. So this is 40-pound braid, SLX DC, and it is sitting at 8 ounces. While the SLX DC XT spooled in 20-pound braid is sitting at 7 1/8 ounce. So the SLX DC XT is almost 1 ounce lighter than the SLX DC. Now for line capacity. So for the SLX DC, you can hold 120 yards of 10-pound mono, 110 yards of 12-pound mono, and 90 yards of 14-pound mono. While for braid, you can hold 150 yards of 20-pound braid, 135 yards of 30-pound braid, and 105 yards of 40-pound braid. And I have 40-pound braid on here. And when I spool up my bait casters, I like to go just to the edge of the spool before it starts to slant up. Now for the SLX DC XT, you can hold 100 yards of 12-pound mono, 90 yards of 14-pound mono, 80 yards of 16-pound mono, and 65 yards of 20-pound mono. I do not have the braid line capacity for this reel. It wasn't on the Shimano website, and I didn't want to put in any false information out there. For me, this is, I believe, 20-pound braid, and I still have roughly around 30 yards left on a 150-yard spool, so I would guess 120 yards, but I'm not positive. And so, just comparing these, you can see that this spool is definitely larger than this, which is part of the reason why I have the lighter line on this reel, because it will be able to hold more, and this will be able to hold more of that heavier line. Because if I put the heavier line on this, I wouldn't really have enough for the stuff I would want to do. So that's why I have this as my heavy jigging, frogging setup, while this is more my finesse setup. So now for the actual braking system comparison. So this is the, first of all, I'd like to get this out of the way. This is the 151. There's also the 150. Basically, all that means is the 151 is left-handed retrieve, and the 150 is right-handed. Same thing for this. This is the 71, which is left-handed retrieve, and then 70 would have been the right-handed retrieve. I like left-handed retrieve, so that's why I got both left-handed. So now for the braking system. So the SLX DC has the IDC4, and the IDC stands for Intelligent Digital Control, and that's its braking system. And it offers 4 modes. So basically, there's a computer chip inside this reel that will slow down the spool to prevent backlashes. So there are 4 modes, and as you can see right here, there's a little dial that helps you switch between each mode. And we're going to get into those modes in a little bit. While this reel has the IDC5 Intelligent Digital Control. So the IDC5 is the newer version of the IDC4. And it's a little different because right here, you see the same knob. It has 1, 2, 3, full, and then also has a W for the wind setting. So it has 5 settings on the outside, but you can also, if you switch this all the way to open, and then switch this to open, you can open up the reel, and inside is 3 additional settings. So we're going to get into what each of those settings mean up next. So first, for the SLX DC, it has 4 settings from 1 through 4. It has no interior settings as far as braking goes. So setting 1, which is right here, is for max distance. So this is the least amount of brakes you can get on this reel. And it allows you to reach your maximum casting distance. I usually use this for like big jigs, swim baits, big top wattles. You don't have to worry about the lure not being heavy enough to make the spool spin. So that's when you get away with 1. Setting 2 is specifically for braided or monofilament line. That's what I usually have my reel set on, even sometimes with those bigger lures, just because I want to prevent backlashes. It has slightly more braking than setting 1, and this is basically my everything setup, my everything like setting. I used to use this for my finesse, and you can if you really wanted to. So this is like crankbaits, sharkbaits, worms, basically your typical bass lures. The heavier stuff you can go with 1. You can go with 1 for those lighter lures like a crankbait, but it's recommended you stay with 2 to prevent backlashes. And then you can go to 3. And setting 3 is specifically for fluorocarbon. If you guys have ever used that, you know it is more prone to backlashing. So this reduces casting distance, but it does significantly help reduce backlashes for fluorocarbon. And also, if you're tossing lighter lures that you think might cause a backlash, you can also switch to that. And then the last setting is going to be setting 4. I don't really ever use setting 4. It's specifically for skipping lures, like if you wanted to skip under a branch. So when that lure hits the water, it won't backlash. And it can also be used for heavy wind conditions. Also, if you're going like super light, I've gone down to like 1/4 ounce crankbaits. You can't cast that fall, but if you really wanted to throw that, you could throw it on this and you won't get that many backlashes. You still probably will get some, but not nearly as many as you would on the higher setting. Okay, now for the SLX DC XT. So this one actually has 2 braking knobs. This one only had the knob right here. This one has 2. So if you switch this knob to open and then switch this to open, you can take this side of the reel off and you get these 3 internal settings. So these are for the different types of line you're using. So the F stands for fluorocarbon, the N is nylon or mono, and then the P is for braided line or polyethylene. And right here, if you can see that, there is a little like arrow, and I like to use a toothpick if I'm going to switch it. And see if it'll focus. There you go. You can switch it to the different lines you're using. So I'm going to keep it on P because I'm using braid. Let's see if I can get this back. Hold on. Come on. Yeah, there we go. So it's on P. So once you put this back onto the reel, you can close it back up, and then you still have these 5 settings. So I'll go over these right now. So on this one, these 4 settings were specifically for the type of line you used. But on this one, the internal settings cover the type of line you use. So these settings are specifically for the weight of the lure. So setting 1 is for big lures weighing from 5/8 ounce to 1 ounce. I think I've even thrown a glide bait that is like over 1 ounce. I don't know exactly. I'll show it at the end of the video. Then setting 2, which would be right here, is for medium lures, 3/8 to 1/2 ounce. And then setting 3 is for small lures, so 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce, which is already super small. But then you can even go down to setting 4, which is for extra light finesse lures down to 1/8 ounce. And then you also have the last setting, wind, which is similar to the brake setting 4 on this. It just helps reduce backlashes in windy conditions. So basically, when you compare these reels, this one has the dial on the outside specifically for the type of braid you're using, but this one has the inside dial for that, and the outside dial is even more specific to the type or the weight of the lure you're using. So you can get even more precise control over the braking settings on the SLX DC XT. hence the name XT stands for extra tuned. That's where there's more settings. So how do I use these reels? So the SLX DC I've had for over like 3 years, and I've loved it. I think it was my first bait castle that I ever really used besides the Black Max, and it was a great reel. I usually, if you're gonna buy this, I started on setting full, which was great for just learning because it's full skipping, so it's really hard to backlash. And then progressively I went down and down and down until I was comfortable casting on 2 or even 1. So I really like this, and I just switched this to my heavy bait cast roll. I had another bait cast roll. I'll show it to you guys later. But I have 40-pound braid on it. I'm going to use this for frogging and all of that. All of that stuff that doesn't really require that extra finesse settings. Well, on this, the SLX DC XT with the finesse settings, I'm going to throw my tiny worms, my crankbaits, my jerkbaits, all that finesse stuff I'm going to throw on this. Also, a little size comparison. This one is definitely bigger. Like, on a rod, you can almost palm this reel. And you can just tell that this reel is lighter. It's just a finesse reel. Another thing I'd like to mention is this has the new Magnum Light Spool 3 that has been significantly thinned compared to this spool to make it even lighter. It also reduces the trajectory motion when you're casting your baits, so not as much up and down motion. So you can really just get a straight cast to the spot you want, which I thought was really cool. So to give you guys a little bit more of a comparison to an average bait caster, this is the Jordan Lee bait caster by Abby Garcia. It is similar to the Black Max size-wise. I will be doing a review on this because I got this reel for $50, and it is a great reel for that price range. So compared to the SLX DC, the SLX DC, as you can see, is significantly thicker, especially at like these points you can tell, and just like overall you can just tell that it's bigger. And then obviously when compared to this, the SLX DC XT is smaller. You can look at it, the spool size is a little bit smaller, it's a lot more narrow, it's a lot more pointed towards the top. So I thought that would be a good comparison because this is a reel that you can find in stores at a lot of places. You can also find the Black Max in stores. So if you guys are ever wondering what the size comparison would be like, the SLX DC XT is smaller than the average regular bait caster, while the SLX DC is a little bit bigger than the average bait caster. So now for just lures, I like to throw on each of these reels. So for the SLX DC, I like to throw my jigs. White jig is one of my favorites, especially when they're feeding the shads. It can be nasty. Also, of course, the natural jig. These are both swim jigs by, I believe, Dirty Bug Jigs. It is a local company in Florida. Also, Jackal Kayera frog. And then anything like this large KVD spinnerbait. And then probably the biggest lure I have that I've thrown is this glide bait. And as you can see, it's almost as big as my hand. So these are the stuff I like to throw on the SLX DC. Just because it has the heavier braid, bigger line capacity, and it seems like a heavier duty reel. Like you can tell this is a finesse reel just because it's lighter, and that's why I like to use it for the finesse stuff. But I'm really trying to throw stuff through cover, like the frog, the jig. I like to use this reel. So if we move that over, some of the stuff I would throw on the SLX DC XT would be stuff like the jerkbait, the X-Strap, something like these big old, even these small crankbaits. I've thrown crankbaits this small, and that's my hand comparison, and I've caught fish on it. I've used these big old crankbaits, right here, this flipless crank. All of these mid to smaller size hold baits I love throwing on this reel. And I've also thrown stuff like almost finesse type lures like this tiny jerk bait. So all of these are great stuff to throw on this reel because it can cast them super far and it has great sensitivity, especially on a lighter rod. On this reel, I like throwing this heavier stuff. So that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Honestly, you can't go wrong with these reels. They're amazing. They're phenomenal. I will be doing a video shortly about them, like casting comparison, stuff like that, fishing with both of them so you guys can see how they actually are on the water. But I fished with both of these and I love them both. You can't really go wrong with them. And I hope you enjoy the comparison, and I'll see you guys next time.